by the obvious realities. You need men who can dream of things that never were. And that was quoted by John F. Kennedy. Now, that is true. You have to be able to dream of things that never were. And I'm no John F. Kennedy, but I have dreams of things that never were. When I was asked to speak at the forum at the EDP, I basically blasted the chairman. I said, dump it in the garbage bin. I don't want to listen to this. Because he talked about a $20 billion export business by 2020. So I asked him, what does that translate into in terms of percentage of GDP? Because the problem in this country is the focus on exports, as the outgoing president and the new incoming president both alluded to, is the percentage of exports have been coming down continuously. He referred to a figure of 17% in 2010 and 14-point-some% in 2014. But if you go back, Mr. Chairman, you will see that it was 34% in 2000. That's just 2010, right? So it has been coming down. So that is a lack of focus. And the lack of focus is a lack of vision. And that is why you need people to think differently. I was speaking at Rotary Club this afternoon at lunch. Mr. Kaharapiti was also there. And I referred to our game plan for this country for the next 5 years at least. And that game plan includes plugging Sri Lanka into the world. If you followed me for the last 5 years, you would have seen a consistency in my policy where I have always promoted exports. And I have mentioned in more than one occasion that we have to concentrate on exports, exports, and exports. I have had many a run-in with the then President of Sri Lanka, Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa, that his focus was not appropriate. I've had a number of arguments with the former governor and the Secretary to the Treasury that their focus was misplaced. And I used to ask in consultative committees, Mr. President, again we've seen a drop in exports in comparison to GDP. And either the governor or the secretary would jump and say, no, but Mr. MP, we have other things to do as well. So exports is also a part of this economy. You must understand that we have to build roads and we have to do this and do that. Wrong. Completely wrong. That is the wrong thing that they did. The focus must be on exports. We must understand that we have no future without exports. I mean, if you can't understand that, go away. Give it to people who understand that. And I understand that very well. And my boss, who's certainly going to be the Prime Minister on the 18th of August, understands that. And that is the reason why we are focusing on exports. If you look at the policy statement, the manifesto that we put out, it's very clear that we want to become the most competitive economy in this part of the world. The word competitive economy naturally suggests that we are going to be, naturally suggests that it is a comparison between countries, among countries. When we say most competitive in relation to who? most competitive in relation to our competitors. So we are not looking at Sri Lanka as Sri Lanka, the island nation of 20 million people. We are looking at Sri Lanka as a dynamic player in the global field. That is the difference. Sri Lanka cannot be considered in isolation. Sri Lanka must be considered in together with the president. Read out a list of countries who taken advantage of the emerging dynamics of global trade. Whether it is Dubai, or Malaysia, or Vietnam. One of the slides, slide number 17 or 18, I don't remember, the one that showed Malaysia and Sri Lanka at the same level of expenditure on R&D, absolutely the same place, about maybe 10 years ago, and how it has now become 10 times what we are. Look at that slide again. I mean, that is focus. The Malaysians understood that you have to focus on exports, competitive, value-added exports. So the game will change, hopefully, on the 17th when we are elected. If we are not, then the game will not change. And then we can go back to our focus, blurred focus, like it was the blurred presentation. I don't mean the content. Maybe I need new glasses, I don't know. So no, I'm gonna pull up the chairman once again, because what I asked the chairman was 20 billion by 2020 is what? What does it mean? And when he said it means the same thing as 10 billion in 2014, I said that's not what the paper is written on, because the focus is not there. If you're the same place at 14.9% of GDP. Now how did this go to 50 billion? 50 billion is 2.5 times the 20 billion that you showed me 2 weeks ago. Not 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago. 2 months ago. So I want to ask you the question, how did this happen? How did you change the target from 20 to 50? I can understand 20 to 25, Mr. Chairman, but I don't understand how we can go from 20 to 50. Sure, I mean, for crying out loud, the UNP is going to rock this, have a party, because the only thing that has changed is the UNP is coming to office. That's the only thing that's changing, nothing else. Your R&D expenditure is the same, your tea exports are the same, your rubber exports are the same, your IT exports are the same. The only damn thing that has changed is we are in office. So if that is the kind of confidence you, ladies and gentlemen, have in us, I just say bye-bye and go back and address some other meeting who I have to still convince people to vote for me. So I think we have already convinced all of you that the only change that has taken place is a change in people who really do believe in you. And I say it with a lot of sincerity. It's not a joke, right? So we understand that it is you who will drive this economy. And it is really sad to know that while the entire export earnings is only $10 billion, which is multiply by 5 times in the next 5 years, that is going to double almost every year, is that the the remittances have now, surpassed almost 7 billion. It's a sad, sad story. It's really not what we want. And this after 10 billion exports, look at how much value-added exports. After 5 billion of textiles and apparels, value-added maybe, I don't know how much, but maybe half of that, right? So how much of value do we bring in these exports, right? So what is a net export? So that is what you need to consider, whereas the net export of the remittances is all hard work of poor, basically low-end workers, particularly mothers and wives and sisters who are really being tortured and killed and commit suicide. So this is not something we should be happy about. And I really didn't like the word Rataviru. The previous government, like Ranaviru, they called them Rataviru, as if they were giving them some honor, but it was really using them to make ends meet. They're not Ratavirus. If they're Ratavirus, you should actually look after these people. Just this, I had dropped in my office for a few minutes, and there's a lady came, and basically sad story that her brother's wife was stuck in some holding center in some Middle Eastern country, and whether I could call the ambassador and bring her down. I said, I can't do that. But that's the reality. So going forward, I'll give you one promise, and that is our focus will be on exports. You wanted to be included, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, in designing and developing export policy. I invite you to be a part of that, and that is the way we are going to be moving forward. It should be consensus driven, it should be win-win, it should be addressing the issues of, like Bangula said at the beginning when he said thank you, because you all are the people who have created the jobs and bringing in the dollars. So if we can't listen to you, then why do we exist? So I'm not going to give you a long speech about the economy, etc., but just to let you know that the new government, certainly it will be UNP-led government starting the 17th, 18th. We know that with certainty will be with you to not guide and nothing to guide, to sort of facilitate exports, and you need men who can dream of things that never were. I would like to see the exports to GDP in the next, I don't know how many years, I don't want to put a date, to surpass GDP. That means more than 100% of GDP. So that is what our aim should be. Not 20 or 30 or 50, but give a number, percentage. Exports should be more than 100% of GDP. If we can get there, I was just telling at lunch, Singapore is 250-something% of GDP. Hong Kong is 300% of GDP. We don't need to get there right away. But let's have a target. Let's have a target. Think about it. You guys think about it. 100% of GDP. If you have a dream like that, then we can really think about a completely different way of looking at exports. Completely out of the box, right?